Good morning. Today is Wednesday, November 6, 2024. We are here for the weekly commissioners meeting. I will now call the meeting to order and ask that you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Adoption of current agenda. Is there any additions or corrections?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to adopt the agenda and remove the workshop from the end of the meeting today.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Approval of minutes, October 23rd, 2024. Is there any additions or corrections?
No, sir.
No,
All right.
here.
Moving on to the approval of warrant registers and payroll rosters.
Mr. Chairman, I only have fund expenditures today, and I moved for fund expenditure approval of $1,071,622.24, and note that it has been reviewed by two members of the auditor's office and our administrator.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Moving on to public comment. Is there anyone in the room for public comment? If so, please come forward, state your name, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Michelle Andrews. Followed up on a lead regarding ballots in Whitman County, turned into a whole research on mail-in balloting. And as part of the canvassing board, you need to be aware that the chain of custody is completely lost when it goes into the Postal Service. They did not notify neither Matt Beaton nor Brenda Chilton about a change in their guidelines 2 months before the general election. The local and state levels, according to the best practices of the Federal Post Office and the inspection postal inspectors who are accountable to the DOJ, are supposed to notify. Then the local authorities are supposed to stipulate how those go. They decided to hand stamp ballots, date and time, in our local facilities and not send the ballots through a specific balloting machine in Spokane. And we have consulted with Matt Beaton. He says, well, less hands it goes through, but how accurate can that possibly be? Our people, I went down to the center and I filled out a form, and our people are not even allowed in the postal facility. They get open trays of ballots. All the security in the RCWs only pertains to the auditor's office and the election system. There is not a single law, not a single RCW that says anything about our ballots when they go through the postal system. As a canvassing board, I don't know if Jeff is the representative. I know that you're on that, and there's a representative from the elections office. This is absolutely proof that we should not have mail-in balloting, period. And there's been many people looking at this all over the state, running it up to the True the Vote and the election integrity folks. But let me tell you, we have to start here in our county and stand up and say, we will not do this anymore. It's not accurate. We don't know what's happening to our ballots. And the best practices chain of custody says so. But this is voluntary. That's not what we're getting. We're not getting access. They're making decisions without our auditors, and the voters voted those auditors to be represented and make those practices local and state. Without a single state law, then it falls to local. It's been reported to the sheriff's office as well. Make it right.
Anyone else in the room for public comment? Good morning.
Good morning. Congratulations, Rocky and Steve,
Thank you.
for your race. It looks like, being the ever optimistic person that I try to be, I need 3,000 votes to get a yes pass on the passage for Prop 1. This is for the first responders, as a reminder. I asked in the last couple of weeks, what Plan B was. And my concern is that we be given enough time. It looks like it may not pass, okay? Just to be looking myself in the mirror and seeing what's really going to happen or not on Prop 1. But it does need to be done. It needs to be run again, and being the ever glutton for punishment, you know, I'm willing to have, and haven't talked with our committee, but I'm willing to be, you know, make a second stab at it and put it before the voters again. And I think once we are able to have plenty of time and less distractions, then we can get a yes vote for our first responders and our citizens. So what I'm asking for then is there a plan? Is there a date that we can have so that then we can go back to work as a committee? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room for public comment? No callers on the phone? Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the consent agenda consisting of 2 items.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Moving on to regular business. At this point, I will open the closed record hearing, sub 2024-02, SEPA 2024-14, Kohler Estates Phase 2, presented by Jeff Briggs.
Good morning, Commissioners, and congratulations on your successful campaigns.
Thank you.
This is a closed record hearing, as you've noted. It is quasi-judicial in nature for 2 reasons. This is a site-specific rezone that is implementing a comprehensive plan land use designation, so that's one reason, which is quasi-judicial in nature. And then the other reason is that this is also a subdivision. So under our code, the applicant is allowed to vest both the subdivision and the PUD application at the same time. So PUD is kind of like, it's a site-specific rezone that can occur in any land use zone within the entire county. And when someone requests a PUD application or a rezone under the PUD ordinance, essentially what we're talking about here is it gives them more flexibility to be creative. So they can do, mixed-use development, cluster development. This is just a simple residential cluster development. The proposal itself is located within one of our landmerds, a rural residential landmerd. And so it's consistent with that comprehensive land designation. But before we get into all of that, because this is quasi-judicial in nature, it does trigger the appearance of fairness doctrine. So I just wanted to make sure that we are complying with that. Of course, the appearance of fairness doctrine dictates that any quasi-judicial hearing be fair both in appearance and in fact. So we're really looking at the appearance of fairness. It gives the audience an opportunity to challenge the action if anything is disclosed at this hearing that triggers the application of that review. So I'll ask some questions of the commissioners, and if there's a yes answer to any of those, it doesn't necessarily disqualify you, although you could recuse yourselves. What it does is it gives the audience an opportunity, if someone wishes to speak up now, they could and say, I think that this commissioner is biased based on, application of this statute. So does any member of the commission, or does any commissioner have any knowledge of having conducted business with either the proponents or opponents of this application? No.
Personally, no.
Okay. Has any member of the Board of Commissioners communicated with any proponent or opponent regarding the proposal that is subject of this application?
No.
Okay. Does any member of the board have either a financial or personal interest in the outcome of the proceeding? Okay.
Oh, yeah, I own property just north of there.
Is it within 300 feet?
I don't know if it borders it, probably not. It's
Okay.
probably, but it is close.
That's one of my questions, is the property within 300 feet? Do you think that based upon ownership of that land, that you would not be able to be fair and impartial in today's proceeding?
I would be fair and impartial, but if it's fine, I'll just recuse myself.
Okay. And you certainly have that right to recuse yourself from a vote. Okay. A few more questions. Does any member of the Board of Commissioners know whether or not their employer has a financial interest in this matter or has an interest in the outcome of this application? No? Does any member of the Board of Commissioners have any special knowledge about the substance of the merits of the proceeding which would cause that board member to prejudice the outcome of the proceeding?
Only the contents of the packet before us today.
Okay, excluding that.
Nope.
Is there any member of the Board of Commissioners who believes that he cannot sit and hear this matter fairly and impartially, both as to the respective positions of the proponents and opponents of the proposal? Okay. Is there any member of the audience who, because of the appearance of fairness doctrine, wishes to disqualify any member of this board from hearing this matter? If so, please state your name to the board and the reason or reasons why you believe that member should be disqualified because of the appearance of fairness doctrine. Okay. And Commissioner Mullen, if you do wish to recuse yourself, you can do so. However, it's not required based on the what we've done here. Because you're saying you can still, despite any interest you might have, that you can remain impartial. So it's totally up to you when we do get to that point where we vote, but you don't have to. So just your call. Is there any more background you'd like to give on the proposal?
If he's going to recuse himself, I don't think he would participate with any questions either.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Here's the location, if that helps.
I'll just recuse myself for
Okay.
appearance-wise.
So just so it's clear, Commissioner Mullen is recusing himself from the proceedings. And so as the application materials note, we have complied with SEPA and MDNS has been issued. Originally, we used the optional DNS process where we notified all potentially interested parties. I believe some comments were received. There was not any appeal that I'm aware of the MDNS that was issued. Talked about what the PUD is, and that based upon the staff report, this does appear consistent with the comprehensive plan. So it's a little bit interesting to read, and Nicole did a very good job on this because she's really sort of weaving together the requirements for a site-specific rezone with the requirements for a subdivision application. And this project is at two different points in time with respect to those applications. Today, the board's decision would grant the PUD site-specific rezone request and at the same time grant preliminary approval of the subdivision. So the application would still need to meet all the requirements in the preliminary approval with respect to the subdivision in order to obtain final approval. One of the things being like water, there's improvements that need to be built. So the applicant would need to come back at that time. But if the board grants this request today, the site-specific rezone would be approved, and the applicant, because this is a preliminary plat approval, would have 5 years within which to obtain final plat approval. Does staff have anything to add?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to add a few comments. I wanted to just highlight some things in the ordinance that's before you this morning. And first, I'll introduce myself, Nicole Stickney, AHBL Contract Planner for Franklin County. And I should also explain, I did not review all of these materials as this was taking place. This was something that kind of arrived to me with the staff changes that you've had. So I can't speak to anything that happened at the Planning Commission meetings. If you have any questions on that, that's why Aaron Gunderson from the office is here with me today. I wanted to highlight that the determination of non-significance comes with 8 conditions, and those are included in the packet for your review. I also wanted to emphasize that the current zoning of the property is RC1, that's a 1-acre minimum lot size. This is the first planned unit development that we're seeing in Franklin County. And the reason why they've approached the county with this application is because the PUD process affords certain flexibility in the way that the subdivision can be developed. One thing that's really important to understand here is that water is an issue that hasn't quite been fully fleshed out at this point, but they are seeking entitlement for this project so they can move forward and get those agreements in place, and so there is a contingency required with this. Another sort of contingency that I would highlight is there's been no geotech assessment done of this property, and that needs to also take place. So there may be an opportunity to revisit SEPA if there's certain mitigation measures that need to be done for those reasons, according to a professional geotechnical report. And then finally, I would also highlight the importance of the time limitation related to the planned unit development component of it. This does give them sort of their own custom zoning. But if they don't move forward with the PUD for any reason with the subdivision, it would revert back to the original zoning. It's not something that then can be transferred to a different proposal. The zoning, sort of specialized zoning, is unique to this subdivision. So as you'll see in the packet, these types of things have been brought into the fold in terms of when we've prepared this ordinance to sort of give these recitals for you. I also wanted to highlight that we have included recitals for how the division of land would comply with Franklin County Code 1620-070. So there's certain affirmations there about provisions for public health, contributing to orderly development, and so forth. So when we look at the different components of the ordinance, you've got the PUD zoning assignment, and we've set that out so that it's very clear because this is going to be, again, a unique zoning assignment. We've set out that this is giving preliminary plat approval. There is a time limitation on that, and the proposed water system approval must be in place before they can move forward, and time limitations and different effective dates. So with that, I think we've got this all pretty well packaged for you, and I would just emphasize once again that the Planning Commission did recommend approval for this planned unit development and the subdivision of land as proposed. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask some questions?
Yes, questions. Commissioner Baumann.
Looking at the conditions of approval, did the proponent have any concerns about any of the conditions of approval?
The proponent of the project is here today and can answer that question. I've not heard of any objections.
Any concerns with the conditions? On the conditions of approval, under the Public Works Department, subsection B, subsection 3, 4, lot owners shall agree to participate in any future LIDs, RADs for roads, drainage, curb and gutter, streetlights, storm sewers, water, sanitary sewers. Most of those things we don't have in Franklin County in our standards. Is this written in this way to prepare for at what point it would be annexed into the city, and then and this is trying to prepare things for them. I'm kind of unfamiliar with this language being in something that we have no ability to, or that's not inside of our purview.
Thank you for that question. What I can say about that is we do have to put measures in place so that if changes are made with the geographic situation, annexation or whatnot, that is covered. I believe that this is boilerplate language. It's not particular to this project in as much as but it is in a LAMERD, so we're looking at it through that lens.
Thank you. No further questions, Mr. Chair.
All right.
No questions.
No questions? All right.
I think someone's going to have to, because Commissioner Mullen has recused himself. Someone is sort of, who's the backup chair?
So the vice chair would be Mr.
Vice
Denier.
chair, sorry. Vice chair.
So at this time, I will close the closed record hearing if there's no more comments.
I believe because it's a closed record hearing, any applicants or opponents could come forward.
Oh, okay.
They can only speak to matters that they commented on, consistent with those. So it's kind of a difficult line to walk, but we can't be inserting new facts into the record. I don't know if the applicant, I know the applicant's here today. I don't know if he has anything he'd like to add.
Is there anybody that would like to add anything to
Okay.
this closed record hearing? Or object to
Speak to
anything?
from the past.
Right, it would have to be someone who had commented
Yep.
earlier.
Seeing none, I will close the closed record hearing and entertain a motion.
So I would move for approval of ordinance 07-2024 as presented.
I second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Chairman, take over your responsibility.
All right, moving on to Commissioner Administrator updates. Eric Johnson.
Good morning, thank you. Just a couple of quick items for you. Obviously, the budget is one of the primary things that I have been spending my time on. I was working on scheduling some meetings with some of the departments and offices to talk about their budgets. I'll be doing that today and tomorrow. We do anticipate continuing to have budget workshops on the 13th, 20th, and 27th. Which we probably will work, and I need to talk to the board a little bit about this. On the 20th, we are scheduled to have an evening meeting, I believe it is, Teresa. And so we would actually think we would do a budget workshop in the afternoon prior to, and not go late into the evening, but rather do a budget workshop in the afternoon on the 20th. And then we would do this, your normal, regular meeting in the evening as planned. So if that's all right with folks, we will schedule that. So
What time were you thinking in the
I
afternoon?
think, did we say 1-ish? Yeah, we would start at 1-ish.
1?
So,
Okay.
yep. If we don't, yeah, that's our current plan. And we'll get that onto your calendar. And then the 20th, we do intend to meet on the 27th, which is the day before the Thanksgiving weekend, and would anticipate having a budget workshop to follow that as well. Our goal will be to initiate the budget approval process on the 2nd of December, which is that Monday. And if we need more time, we can certainly recess the meeting and always come back. But that would be our current plan. And then other things, working on a variety of elements for the HAPO Center, in particular working on both a kind of a guide for contract management associated with that contract, and making sure that it's clarity around all of the differing responsibilities for the contractor, the differing responsibilities for the county, and really having something that regardless who is going to manage that, they really have kind of that checklist of what needs to be followed and done kind of like that cookbook of contract management on this specific contract from a performance perspective. So working on that and working with the HAPO HWL folks and Mike McFall over there. So that's one element. And then really also working on a series of other scope and sequence activities. You know, we've got, obviously we have an issue with HVAC. We have an issue with, not an issue, we have project potentially with HVAC. We have a project for paving of the lot. We've got a lot of activities going on over there. So making sure we're setting forward a timeline for decision-making on those activities. And then we are going to look at recommending an extension to the interlocal agreement with Pasco through March 31st. I think there's 31 days in March, so March 31st. So we would initiate that sometime probably here late November, December to extend that interlocal agreement, which is set to expire at the end of December. And then start to continue to, we should have the master plan, and then hopefully we can continue to work with our Pasco partners about the long-term management, long-term use of that property, and be thinking about the roles that each of the two entities would play moving forward as well then. So it gives us some time to have more discussions in regards to that. So that's a little bit on HAPO, the HAPO Event Center. And I think those are the big pieces that I guess I want to comment. We did get your letter to the Supreme Court submitted. I think they have another hearing coming up in November, I want to say 11th-ish, I can't remember the date, where they'll do another discussion with the Supreme Court as a whole as they look at potentially establishing new court rule. So that's it.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Bauman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had the opportunity last week after the commission meeting to go and see a home dedicated to a new family with First Story. It's a pretty neat program. One of the large builders around here dedicates a portion of the sales of each of their homes to the First Story, and dedicating it to people that couldn't traditionally be able to afford a home. And I think this was the home number 115, and there's a deed restriction on those homes that if they're ever sold, that it goes back into the program. They sell it, they get their profit out of it, but it's purchased back by First Story and is renewed and then sold at a reduced rate or at a attainable level for people that can't do that. It was pretty special. It was a big community turnout there, so really thankful to be invited to that. Lots of different meetings around the courthouse here about budget and learning, continuing to learn and understand how that it's put together and how it works. And yesterday was a little bit of a bittersweet day in our house. Our son joined the armed forces, and I got to shake his hand and pass him off as a man in service of our country. So pretty special, but bittersweet. So that's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Didier.
Light week. I just want to ask Mr. Bauman to please thank your son again for serving our country, this great republic, America. Not really a lot to report on. I had a lot of phone calls about the initiatives that were on the ballot and how confusing they were in the ballot, in the book that you get to read on. And I had to explain to him that whenever there's a reduction in taxes for the state, the AG gets to write it. And that's why it's so confusing, because he got to write it. And people didn't know. They couldn't tell if they were supposed to vote yes or no. And I think this put a lot of confusion into a lot of people's vote. I don't think that it's right that he gets to rewrite this before the people make their decision. But that's the way it's done right now. The other question I have is the AG's opinion on our unconstitutional pay that happened right here in Franklin County. It's $100,000, and I think that we need to demand an answer on this AG's opinion if we're waiting for it. Or we take it before a judge and let a judge decide. And the last thing, Jeff, is the policy on the selling of surplus land. Have we got that put into place yet? Are we working on that? Where are we at on that?
We do have a draft policy, so we could, we had presented that at workshops, I think, quite some time ago. We could dust that off and bring it back for another workshop,
Yes.
if you'd like, okay?
I'd like to get that put into place.
Okay.
Thank you. That's my end of my report.
And I think the draft, and I need to go back and check it myself, but I think you're also interested in particularly real property, just not surplus property, but real property
Yes.
in addition to the typical sale of old equipment and
Thank you for that clarification, yes.
So this last week had the WASAC meeting discussing the underutilization and broadband access. But other than that, just budget concerns. So that is it for my report. Moving on to public comment. Is there anyone in the room for public comment?
For lack of sounding like a broken record. Also, when observing the votes for a campaign, I was informed that there were 300 people that registered to vote that day in Franklin County. And when working with Benton County Partnership, that's like 2,000 people. They had 50 people in line all day going around the block registering to vote. The court, the judge deciding to change our voting laws, you add that to the omni ballot, and then the finger signing on a phone like you do at a restaurant, nobody can verify those signatures. And the omni ballot, a gal filled it out and signed it, her address, to a homeless shelter. That's a provisional ballot that will never be able to be tracked down. Furthermore, our AG and Mr. Hobbs certified ballots, the language that other states and places use, certify legal ballots. And our voting system has never been audited. When you have a letter to the employees changing how we collect ballots within the mail system, and it's all voluntary, and our local auditors don't have the opportunity to supervise what goes on inside those facilities, you have lost a chain of custody. I'm not sour grapes over our election. I can sit here and say, yes, I'm unburdened from the things of the past, presidentially. But the votes are not reflecting the ground. And for all voters, regardless of where they vote or where their ideologies are, have the right to know that their ballots are being counted properly, that there isn't a flood of votes that don't belong there. And I mean, I stayed up last night partly in joy and partly in agony. You have the power to challenge this. So does Matt Beaton, to challenge this memo that went out to employees only. It doesn't comply with the best practices from the federal level. And I think if you start working now, down the road, we will have success. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room for public comment? Hearing none, is there need for an executive session today?
No, but I believe we may have a need for a closed session, which we don't need to announce, but for union negotiations.
Do we want to do that after we adjourn the meeting?
Yes, please.
All right, thank you. So at this point, with no further business for the
Mr.
good of the-
Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to ask a question of Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, what could we do on this aspect of our election that somebody can register the same day and vote without proof of citizenship? As commissioners, what could we do? Write a letter? I know there's an initiative process that's already underway that they're going to try to change it with an initiative process. We have seen that our initiatives, only one of them looks like it's going to pass, and that's the natural gas one. And it looks like the tax on 2117 has failed. And people aren't voting themselves a decrease in this overreach of government with this climate change initiative. So what could we do as commissioners?
Well, I guess the first things that pop into my mind is, number one, is certainly talking to your legislators who
Yep.
could introduce legislation. That's probably the number one activity from an advocacy perspective in what your role is. The second piece is, having conversations perhaps with Auditor Beaton about what's the perspectives of those auditors that administer elections on behalf of the state. And what's happening from their perspective collectively. Identifying, in particular, talking with maybe Auditor Beaton about what did the auditors see collectively throughout the state of Washington this year. So providing, factual information in regards to how the system worked or didn't work. What were the risks associated with what they saw this year with same-day voter registration. So I think, and are there, or do other states have different best practices? I think you heard about signing, like you said. I know when I sign, something on a screen, it's my signature is barely legible to begin with, and now you ask me to sign on a screen. That's very problematic. But so anyway, I think there are different number of things. I mean, it clearly is. In our state, is the Secretary of State is a state elected office, does administer elections, but they administer those elections generally under the authority of an RCW. And then I think this has always been a piece for us, I think, at the county level, which is the RCWs don't provide enough clarity. So all of a sudden, an agency gets to do rulemaking. And that's when rulemaking provides for much of the clarity that sometimes provides for some of those things. So asking the legislature to provide greater clarity in statute and less ambiguity that has to be done through either two things, either through a state agency making a rule or through the courts providing that clarification through case law, neither which are necessarily a preference.
But as commissioners, we can't change this election process in our county.
Not that I'm aware of. Yep. You could talk to, Auditor Beaton about what his span of control or authority is under the RCW and under the WAC, but.
Well, I've been at him
Yep.
numerous times about just taking our county and taking it back to a precinct, showing your ID to vote, and he said we can't do that.
We have a state, we are a complete state vote by mail, done by RCW.
I think it'd be a great thing to have a workshop on, request
Have the auditor
the auditor to
here
come.
and the election of people.
Yeah,
Yes,
and just have a conversation.
Yeah.
I think the public would probably enjoy that as well.
Exactly.
And I think Auditor Beaton could probably try and have the State Director of Elections under the Secretary of State, come and chat about that as well.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I believe it would be too. And as a workshop, the public would be willing, have the opportunity to voice their opinion. So that would be very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep, thank you. So with no further business for the good of the county, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Closed record hearing, how long do you think that'll be?
Close record.
Or closed, I'm sorry.